Hey, it's Mazzy, and welcome back to the channel. Are you ready for some Velvet Underground, the great influential noise rock band, experimental avant-garde from 1967 on? Obviously, this is the most influential album, one of the most influential albums that influenced so many bands, even though supposedly they barely sold 6,000 when this came out. I'll get into that in a minute, but I'm here because of this box set, okay? This has been repressed in the last few months from Sundazed. This is all the Verve MGM records of Velvet Underground. Of course, it does not include Loaded because that was 1970. That was on Atlantic Records. I'll mention that as we get into this conversation. But this is a box set. And what's really interesting about this, I had no idea this had come out, went out of print, was going for a lot of money, then was recently repressed. Because back in 2013, I got this set. Very similar, almost exact, except, I mean, a lighter cover, obviously a different type of package compared to this one, but the exact same content, same records that are in. And I'll get through those in a minute. But there's been a lot of buzz because this came in print. And this was going for hundreds of dollars, this box set. And Sundazed repressed it. And people are really liking it. So I was really curious because, I mean, this is a great catalog, and it's a very interesting catalog. Not accessible to everyone, some of their music, but that's kind of the joy, if you can call it joy, in the Velvet Underground. Now, what's interesting about this versus this, now, it's both on Sundazed Records, so I was really surprised that I totally missed this and didn't know about it. Of course, maybe I just wasn't paying attention because I already had the music, and I have some early copies too. I'll get into it in a little bit, and I'm going to tell a personal story of the first album from my junior high school days, because I think background and where the music is coming from in my life is something I like to share, and I enjoy it. So Bob Irwin from Sundazed Records, he started Sundazed. He was an A&R guy at Columbia. That's why there's a lot of Columbia content on Sundazed. The Byrds and Leonard Cohen and Bob Dylan, and just, if you don't know Sundazed, it's a really great, really interesting reissue label. So these were cut from files. This is not direct analog tapes, but they sound as good as these are going to sound, okay? These are not audiophile records, so you don't expect it. So some may ask, Mazzy, if you had that, why did you need to go here? Well, people were talking about it. What happened is, this was cut by Kevin Gray. Yes, that Kevin Gray. But he cut these from the files provided by Bob Irwin, so this is not all analog. Now, I've been reading some things about people really enjoying this, but I don't know if they've been comparing it, but I compared these two. The bottom line, the quickest answer, if you want an answer, there's no difference. There's very little difference. I mean, as their records continue, by the third record, they sound actually pretty good, like a real record. Early on, of course, they're not hi-fi masterpieces, even with Tom Wilson producing and co-producing and on the boards there. They're not hi-fi, and they're not meant to be. They're noisy records. They're semi-industrial pop records. They're meant to be the antithesis of what the East Coast, West Coast thing, that yin yang thing, against the flower power of San Francisco and even the slickness of Los Angeles. That's what Lou Reed and John Cale and Sterling Morrison and Maureen Tucker and, of course, Nico wanted. At least Nico was brought in that fashion model to sing the songs with that kind of atonal voice that actually really works, considering. I'll get to this in a minute, as I said, but I did a comparison. I played these pretty much back to back over the last week or so, and there's not much difference, really. So if you have this, you probably don't need this. So I'm gonna, since I like the cover better, but pretty much the content is identical. The pressings, everything. These are good pressings. I think RTI actually pressed these, so that's a good thing. I don't know who pressed the original box set then, and it was kind of like a weak, thin cardboard at the time, but, take them out of the box. Now, this is how it came originally, okay? The Sundazed box set. you'd have this, okay? It's peeled for you, but there is an insert, and if you wish, you can pull this off and place it over, like color forms. Remember color forms? Kind of like that. My guess is once you put it on, I don't know if it's removable. So, of course, I'm not going to peel. I didn't peel my copy from 1973. I'm certainly not going to peel this one. Now, I've compared this to mine, 1973, both these boxes, and I would say that, again, they're almost identical. They're almost the same fidelity-wise, which is, if you've heard this album, I think most of you have, it's not a great hi-fi record, but that's not the point. It's the music, obviously, right? It's not a hi-fi record. But I will say, this 1973 pressing that I got, this is the second one I got. I did get a copy in late 67 or early 68 that somehow went missing. I don't know. Someone stole my banana. So when I worked at my first job in a record store, I picked a copy up. So this is a 1973. I've never peeled away the banana, and this is an excellent copy, but it is a little noisy. The pressings from, again, early 70s during the oil crisis on Verve Records, a little noisy. And the two Sundazed records are pretty quiet, especially the newest one. So I would say in terms of the quietest pressings, this wins. But overall, sonic-wise, you know, maybe one's a little more of something on one. And I don't even want to talk about the dynamics and the pressing and the highs and lows, because with this music, it almost doesn't matter, right? It's noisy stuff for the most part, and there are exceptions. In the original box, and this emulates on both boxes, on the Sundazed box, you get, obviously, the Velvet Underground and Nico, the debut, with the sticker. You get White Light, White Heat, the Velvet Underground. This is from 1968, a very noisy album, another cover, like the debut, designed by Andy Warhol, except he doesn't really get a credit on this. I'm not quite sure why. This is their noisiest record. This is their most challenging record for some people. I adore this record, but this is something that a lot of people can't get into. Those boomers and those rock fans of the 1970s, almost the only record, they may get into the first one just because it's so infamous and famous and you feel you have to like it. I adore it. But they probably get into Loaded more, the Atlantic record, which is the best recorded record of their career, of the original, or adding Doug Yule, taking out of a John Cale album. But this is a noisy record. It has, of course, great songs like Sister Ray, White Light, White Heat, which is noisy as hell, The Gift, which is somewhat of a spoken word piece of John Cale, which is really good. This is more an experimental avant-garde, but there are riffs in it. There are great songs. I mean, Lou Reed was a great songwriter. Lady Godiva's Operation, Here She Comes Now. You know, Lou Reed comes from the Brill building of songwriters and into doo-wop stuff. So you have hints of that in this record, and I adore it. Of course, then you have their third record, The Velvet Underground here. And this is when they pushed out pretty much John Cale. There's a lot of rivalry over the decades of John Cale and Lou Reed. And someday, if I ever do a really deep dive into their records, I may at some point. But this is a photograph taken at the factory. This is 1969. Of course, this has Candy Says, and Doug Yule sings that. Beautiful, melodic, and one of Andy Warhol's characters, obviously, at the factory. What Goes On? Now, one of the most beautiful songs, and Lou Reed used to say it's one of his favorite songs, but it's actually, he considered it a secular song, but a song called Jesus. It's a beautiful recording. There's some beautiful, like, double-track vocals or harmonies, as I recall, on it. Now, I'm Set Free, The Story of My Life, and After Hours, which is the beautiful song that Mo Tucker sings solo. And it's kind of this quiet, childlike ending, and it's a perfect ending to the noise on this. But the wild thing on here, obviously, is the murder mystery, which is an angst piece of noise and experimentation, and it's a cool 8.5-minute track. I like it a lot, actually, and I love this record. I think this is an excellent record. And then in this collection, you have the Velvet Underground 1969. This is a later posthumous record that was put together originally in 1984, I believe, with a different cover, and I'll show you that to you. This is, in theory, what would have been their fourth album. And again, it fits right alongside of the third album. This goes right into late 1969, and of course, literally it says 1969, but it's a great record. Now, they didn't want to be a commercial band initially, but if they wanted hits, they realized they had to write more accessible songs, and obviously that would happen with the Atlantic record, and a little bit with the third, and possibly this record. So that's in there. The Bonus, in a way, which is a great record, again, also produced by Tom Wilson, and this is Nico, Chelsea Girl. What an amazing record. This is produced by Tom Wilson, as I said again, and this has some songs of some covers or early versions of songs by, for instance, I think there's 2 tracks on here by Jackson Browne, including These Days. Before Jackson Browne, he was a young songwriter, 17 years old or something, when this song was brought to Nico and on this record. What a wonderful, wonderful record this is. Paul Morrissey, of course, where the other Morrissey got his name, photographed this liner cover. These Days, Little Sister, Winter Song, Chelsea Girls. This is an important part of the Velvet Underground story. I think John Cale is on this, and Lou Reed might have helped out on this too, as I recall. But anyway, this is in this set, and because it was on Verve Records, MGM Records at the time. Now, some people are upset because all of these are on Verve, where some of the later ones with the third album, I believe, the self-titled, was originally put out on the sister, more pop label, MGM. Some say it's because that's more rock-based, like Frank Zappa went on, and Verve was more folk and jazz and things. But whatever the reason is, these Sundays are put out on the Verve label. I'll get into that in the new box, because there is one issue. Both come with posters, promo posters for the record, kind of repro. Come step softly into the inevitable world of the Velvet Underground. Cool poster, right? Like almost like a Rolling Stone magazine ad. And there's a second poster here, a promo poster of the first album, the debut. And these posters are included in both the original box from 2013, this one, and the current box of Underground, the Verve MGM albums. You see what that's like. Now, there is an issue that some people's heads are exploding about. Obviously, you have Velvet Underground and Nico. It's interesting how Andy Warhol gets his name big with no mention of the band on the cover there. You get another separate banana peel off, and you get the 2 posters. They're the same, so you don't need to see them again. And you get all the albums as shown. Now, there is one issue that I want to call out because some people are upset about this, and it's on mine too. It is, and you won't be able to see it in this light or on this. If you look at the label closely, you'll see a bleed through of the same label, almost as if they were on the printing, the ink or the plates were dirty, and there's an imprint of the previous label. It's not 2 labels on top of each other. It's just a shadow, a ghosting of the Verve. I don't know if you can see it there. I'll turn it around. But to me, it doesn't affect the music. These are beautiful pressings. Again, they're not sonic masterpieces. So if you have the other versions, there's no real upgrade. Kevin Gray did a great job, but again, I think he did the best that anyone has done on these records. Again, I don't hear a big difference between the earlier box and this box, or my early copies of these records. Now, the earlier versions that I have in my collection came out in the 1980s. I hadn't purchased the subsequent albums after the debut in 1967 until the 1980s. I listened to them in the store, but for whatever reason, I didn't pick them up. In 1984, Polygram did an issue of them. This is a 1984 pressing. 1984 pressing. And in 1984, they got a big response from these. And the Velvet Underground really got a resurgence in the 80s, probably because of the post-punk and industrial music. And they fit right in that period. And so these records were in print. They sold fairly well at the time. And that's when they put out the Velvet Underground, this album. And this is essentially as close as you can get to that 1969 album that comes in the box. This is basically what might have been their fourth album with this group when Doug Yule was in the band then. So it's just a different variation, different cover, but it's part of that 1984 series of records. And then just a couple of other things. Here's a live album originally in 1972. This released live at Max's Kansas City. Then there's the reunion album from 1993. They did a 6-week tour in Europe. All original members. The 4 original members of Lou Reed, John Cale, Mo Tucker, and Sterling Morrison. Obviously, Nico had passed by this point. They did a really successful. This is a great record. This is 4 LPs. It came out initially on CD. They rock on here. All the songs are faster than they were in the original versions. They played all throughout Europe. This was recorded in Paris. I believe they did 2 nights in Paris. Excellent record and a rock record. And by the end of that tour, John Cale and Lou Reed were at wits' ends again and never continued the tour in the States, unfortunately. But this is a fantastic record. It's more of a tighter band at that point, a performing band, since everyone had been performing, especially Lou Reed and John Cale in their own way over, the 25, 28 years since they kind of split doing that. And it's an excellent, excellent record. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention their most commercial album. 1970, they go to Atlantic Records and they do Loaded here. Their greatest sounding record. Now, there is a double 45 Atlantic 75 issue, and everyone that I hear who has it loves it, says it's amazing. I don't like double 45, so I passed on it, but I like this record. It's their most commercial record, their most accessible record. Who Loves the Sun is like a power pop song, very commercial. It could have been a Monkees song in a way. Sweet Jane and Rock and Roll, of course, those 2 songs became staples on the entire solo career of Lou Reed, especially with this Rock and Roll Animal album, which had some killer guitar stuff and vocals. What a great, powerful live album this is. But this whole album, with Doug Yule singing some of the songs and Lou Reed singing it. Now, the thing about it is you will notice, especially on Sweet Jane, 1970, Lou Reed is all in doing his own version of Bob Dylan. He sounds like doing the inflections of what Bob Dylan was doing around earlier, actually, with the rockin' stuff there. He's doing totally 1965, 66 Bob Dylan vocal styles here. So he uses that a pattern. He finally obviously finds his own voice, but there's a lot of that reminiscent of Bob Dylan on this record in terms of the vocal style with Sweet Jane, a little bit with Rock and Roll. New Age is kind of beautiful, low-key song here. Lonesome Cowboy is on here too. It's a very commercial album, and they set out to make a commercial album, which they did. It still didn't do very much, but Loaded is an important album, and I highly recommend that. And if you're not a fan of the noise sound of Velvet Underground and you just want one record, that's probably the one to get. I still think the one album, the most important album in their discography, is the debut of the Velvet Underground and Nico. Executive produced, we'll say, by Andy Warhol, with help from Tom Wilson on some of it. But what a wonderful, wonderful record this is, and a great record. Now my story, my personal story. I turned 13 in August 1967. I go into the 8th grade, and I have this music teacher. Her name is Carolyn Schwartz. Visually, picture this. Barbara Streisand look-alike. The profile, the hair cut short like Swing in London, with the cut coming up. Those pictures of Barbara Streisand in 1964, 1965, 1966. Carolyn Schwartz was the music teacher. She had that look, the short dresses, the nose, the hair, and she taught music. Every Friday, remember, this is San Francisco Bay Area, 1967, 13-year-old music class. Every Friday, she dims the lights and she plays a record. Well, she plays this record. Can you imagine if a teacher in American public school in 2025 pulled out a record like this with a song called Heroin and played it for 14-year-olds? I'm Waiting for My Man, Femme Fatale, Venus in Furs, the Black Angel's Death Song. None of us ran home to our parents crying, boo-hoo-hoo, we're being influenced. None of us became heroin junkies, except for that one kid. No, I don't know. I mean, it's so bizarre how the education system has been so sanitized. Like all these snowflakes out there that are all upset that their kids are going to be exposed to the world. I did go buy this record. That's the extent of it. I went and bought this record in the fall of 1967, as I recall. I think it was that early because my teacher played it. Now, if my parents came in my room and heard me playing the song Heroin, if they even recognized it, you know how that song goes on and on and on when they stick the spike into my vein. Can you imagine? We're going to call your music teacher. Where did you get that rubbish? They were totally supportive and they talked to me about stuff. That's what the parental child thing needs to be. Talk to your kids. I'm a parent. I've been there. But that's my story. My music teacher in the 8th grade in 1967 played this record and I bought it. And I got into the Velvet Underground. That's an overview here. The Sundazed box is something to get. If you don't have these records, that's probably your best bang for the buck. That Nico record is amazing, and those 3 records are important records. In terms of the 1970 record, there is a massive box set, I understand, that has fully loaded. I do have the CD that came out in 1997 here with a lenticular cover. And this is loaded, fully loaded, that has extra tracks and things. And if you're a CD person, I don't know if this is still available or find a used copy, this is essential. I never peeled mine off, and this is peelable too. This is a 5 CD set that has all these records except for the Nico record. It does have the Atlantic record because Rhino has control of this stuff now, and that's Atlantic Records. So it has their first 3 records plus the 1970s. So from 67, 68, 69, and 70, plus some early tape things on here with a fabulous book. In 1969, the Velvet Underground played several nights at the Matrix Club in San Francisco, co-owned by Marty Ballin of the Jefferson Airplane. And there are tapes that have come out, records that have come out of the Doors playing the Matrix, and the sound guy at that tiny club. I've been in that building. It was a 21-year-older type of club, bar club. So I never went when it was called the Matrix. But I've been in the space years later, and it's a tiny space. But this came out some years ago. They went back, got those tapes, did an amazing job. This originally came out on compact disc. This is a lot of music. And both shows, and it sounds incredible. It's more than a bootleg quality sound. It's great. It's them when Doug Yule was in the band in 1969 in San Francisco, playing a lot of these great songs. And the banter is there. The songs are there. The experimentation's there. Highly recommended. Probably for most people, the CD is sufficient, the CD box of that. But if you're a fan of Velvet Underground, I think that's an essential part of the discography of Velvet Underground. So if you have no Velvet Underground records at all, I would say the Sundazed set would be a a wonderful beginning to build that collection. They don't have a lot of records, so you don't have to go far, but this would cover the first 3 albums, the unreleased 4th albums, plus that wonderful Nico record, and then get a copy of Loaded. If you are just someone who wants radio-friendly music, something more accessible, Loaded is the one for you. And that's not taking away that it's not a great record, but it's a very different sound. It's a more commercial sound. It's not noise-laden. It's a really, really excellent record from 1970. And Rhino has versions of it on 33 that are out over the last decade that you can get. There's an alternative version that came out during I guess Rocktober, a version one year. You can get that. There's a massive box set on it that came out recently. Or you can go with the Atlantic 75. I'm not a fan of the 75, but again, as I said, I understand it's an exquisite sounding version that comes out Atlantic 75. So that's the essential Velvet Underground catalog. Check it out. Mazzy loves you.